This is not a polite sequel written from a correspondent's desk. This is not just another nested story about laws, coalitions, and budget talks. This is the story of how a man after defeat was rebuilt into someone almost untouchable. How a brother's myth, a nation's trauma and global crises became the stage for something bigger than politics. A long project of keeping almost absolute power inside a democracy. In this part of the alphabet of Benjamin Netanyahu, he doesn't enter politics as a reformer, but as the heir to a myth. And the further he goes, the less there is of ideas, the more of tactics. This is the story of a politician who doesn't just want to win elections. He wants to design a system in which losing becomes nearly impossible. Netanyahu doesn't step into politics like a man who wants to tweak laws. He walks in like someone paying off a debt, to his brother, to history, to Israel's isolation. In 1988, he enters the Knesset, roughly the equivalent of the US House of Representatives or the UK House of Commons, but in a system where every sentence, every face, and every microphone can be a bridge to a coalition or a minefield. He doesn't arrive as a backbencher. He's the outsider who already knows all the internal codes. He speaks better than the veterans, understands cameras, emotions, and how to pull the right chain to trigger a domino of reactions. He doesn't need party seniority. He needs 1 minute on air and gets dozens. As an MP, he immediately got W on a higher level. The foreign ministry comes quickly. Speeches every day. Meetings with Americans, in their language, their TV style, but with Israeli steel underneath. In 1993, riding the frustration after the Oslo Accords, he becomes leader of Likud, national conservative, security-obsessed, pro-free market. His predecessors wanted to be prime minister. He wants to be inevitability. From that moment, everything is scaled to the average voter, not the expert. To someone who wants to feel safe, even if it means being brutal. Netanyahu stops being just a political figure and becomes an aesthetic. Fear, strength, determination. Posters, TV spots, speeches, everywhere. Yoni, Entebbe, never again weakness. In 1996, after Rabin's assassination and in the shadow of deals with Arafat, he wins. At 46, he becomes Israel's youngest prime minister. An era begins, not just of a government, but of Netanyahu himself. He is no longer a commentator of history. He rewrites it. Instead of signing agreements, he freezes them. Instead of opening talks, he closes them. He stiffens the Palestinian track, slows the peace process, tightens ties with the US, but on his terms. His style is controversial, but effective. I don't care about your principles, I care about outcomes. Campaigns start to look like Marvel trailers mixed with Pentagon briefings. Politics turns into a product. Netanyahu becomes a brand that never cracks, never apologizes, never blinks. Then 1999 comes and he loses power. Not in an assassination, not in a coup, but in an ordinary election. Ehud Barak wins, a former general with a softer voice. The media say, Israel wants a break, calm, normality. Netanyahu sees betrayal, or at best fatigue. For him, democracy is only a way to measure strength. People didn't really choose Barak. They were tired. And then he does something no one expects. He vanishes. No new party, no loud opposition, no manifesto. For 2 years, he is absent from the Knesset and the evening news. But his silence is the sound of someone sharpening a knife. He hasn't retreated. He's gone into the shadows to grow. In that shadow, he writes, meets, analyses, redraws maps in his head, and designs a new version of himself. He doesn't want just to become prime minister again. He wants to become unsinkable. He looks for a mechanism of return that will make him almost impossible to remove. He comes back in 2003 as finance minister. Everyone expects the same security rhetoric. Instead, he slams the economy with radical free market reforms, cuts benefits, rewrites budgets, sounds like a libertarian in Jerusalem. The left is furious. Religious partners choke it down. But Netanyahu is building something, a new base. He no longer relies only on fear. He leans on statistics, markets, Excel. He learns that to return, he must not only be strong, he must be indispensable. He talks to small business owners, union members, young voters who don't remember Entebbe but care about rent and wages. He still warns about Iran and Hamas, but now also about inflation and the housing crisis. It's his second transformation, from general in a suit to CEO of the state. Then comes the Gaza withdrawal, Likud splits, Ariel Sharon leaves to form Kadima, and Likud looks like a wreck. Netanyahu stays. He turns the wreck into a submarine. He rebuilds the party, tightens the machine, modernizes the message. Campaigns look like movie trailers, his rallies like product launches. The 2008 global financial crisis hits. The world panics. Netanyahu smells opportunity. In 2009, he returns as prime minister, upgraded. This is no comeback. This is an installation. Israel faces economic turmoil, Iran's nuclear threat, Hamas in Gaza, unstable coalitions. Netanyahu starts managing the country like a company built around one person, himself. Ministries become departments. Every speech is brand messaging. Every leak is treason. Everything runs through one server, the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister stops being just an official and becomes the central processor of the state. Coalitions are turned into machines, ministers into loyalists, the media into a battlefield. He locks down 3 pillars: security, economy, narrative. On security, he offers 0 illusions. Iran is existential. Hamas is terror. Hezbollah is a loaded gun. Peace is fine, on his terms. In 2015, he flies to Washington to speak in Congress against the White House's Iran policy. Not as a supplicant, as a warner-in-chief. Obama fumes. The left rages. But Israelis see a leader who doesn't kneel. Economically, Israel rides a golden decade of tech. Startups explode. Tel Aviv becomes a mini Silicon Valley, and Netanyahu sells it as my model. At Davos, on global forums, on TV, on social media, he's everywhere. In narrative, he goes even further, builds alliances with friendly tycoons, pressures hostile outlets, uses social media like a weapon. The opposition withers, the left fractures, the center wanders. Netanyahu becomes political gravity. You don't have to love him, but you can't ignore him. Then come the criminal cases, corruption, media deals, gifts from billionaires. Instead of shrinking, he turns the courts into another campaign stage. Every indictment is a conspiracy. Every prosecutor is the leftist elite. Every judge is detached from the people. Despite the charges, he stays in power. Even when he briefly loses the premiership, he keeps control of the narrative. In 2022, after yet another round of elections and messy coalitions, he returns to office. Officially, he is back. In reality, he never left. He waited until the country was tired enough of trying life without him. Back in the chair, he doesn't just resume. He tries to redefine the system that once limited him: the judiciary. In the winter of 2023, one word dominates Israel: reform. Limiting the powers of the Supreme Court. Changing how judges are chosen. Weakening the only brake on the government. The streets explode, huge protests, flags, blocked highways, pilots and doctors refusing to serve. For one half of Israel, this is a coup. For Netanyahu and his camp, restoring balance. He plays his favorite game: chaos management. One day he speaks of unity. The next, his ministers attack protesters as traitors. The first part of the package passes. The court loses a key tool. The country shakes. Even some inside Likud whisper that it's too far, but no one dares challenge him. They know Netanyahu doesn't just defeat rivals, he destroys them. Israel, the state of startups and kibbutzim, suddenly looks like a place where democracy is no longer a given. Western allies warn, markets flinch, but Netanyahu stands, calculating. Israel turns into a 2-layer country, the official one, where everyone repeats the word democracy, and the practical one, where Netanyahu is almost irremovable. New opposition leaders appear, new civic movements rise, but none of them has Entebbe, Yoni, the blood and trauma that shield Ben from doubt. He does not speak only as a politician. He speaks as the brother of a fallen hero, and uses that capital ruthlessly. So, where are we now? Israel is still alive, but it is not the same country the world knew 10 or 20 years ago. Democracy is no longer automatic. Netanyahu is no longer just a prime minister. He is the architect of a system built around his own survival. Is he still a democratic leader, or already a hegemon who made himself too big to remove without breaking the house? That is the question hanging over every speech, every law, every crisis. In this episode, we walked from his first seat in the Knesset to the biggest constitutional crisis in modern Israel. And it's still not the end. Because Netanyahu is not just a politician. He is the main actor of a very long play he wrote, directed, and stars in. That's why in Part 3, we'll talk about what lives off stage, family, shadow networks, TikTok, the war in Gaza, and the things that are never said out loud but define him more than any law. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and tap like. For you, it's one click. For me, it's a signal to keep telling the kinds of stories most people prefer to leave in the dark.